Thank you, Councilman Lujan, for helping us begin today's event in a good way. As we begin this session, we gather united in our commitment to protecting tribal sovereignty, strengthening our nations, and advancing the well-being of our citizens. Grounded in our inherent rights and collective leadership, this work continues to shape a stronger future for our tribal nations. Now I am honored to invite our NCAI Youth Commission co-presidents, Angelina Serna and Jonas Kanuhsa, to the stage to deliver their address. Let's welcome these two amazing young leaders.
Segu Sogwe, Jonas Kanuhsa Nugets, Turma Nogale, Onioteaga, Oskale Wage, Niwagi Dolota. Good morning, elders, tribal leaders, and relatives. My name is Jonas Kanuhsa, and I come from the Turma Band of Chippewa Indians in Oneida Nation, Wisconsin. I'm currently attending ASU to obtain a Master of Legal Studies and will be graduating this spring. I am honored to stand before you today. I am honored to stand before you today as the co-president of the National Congress of American Indians Youth Commission, a role that allows me to advocate for Native youth across North America.
Minogajeb Induamaganadok, Nigaj Baneshi, Birudan Dijnakas, Mekanakwar Jon and Awag Minua, Onayotea Kandunjba, Shikendodem, Ojibwe Nadakwe and Dao. Good morning to all of my relatives. My given name is Gentle Callingbird, and my English name is Angelina Serna. I am Turtle Clan. I come from the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa Indians and the Oneida Nation of Wisconsin. In the fall, I'll be a senior at Cornell University, majoring in anthropology with a double minor in American Indian and Indigenous Studies and Inequality Studies. And I proudly serve as one of the two co-presidents for the National Congress of American Indians Youth Commission.
We are proud to be here today with the responsibility and opportunity to speak in a room full of advocates and allies who have dedicated their lives to protecting our tribal nations is both humbling and motivating. The people in this room have spent decades protecting our nations, fighting for our treaty rights, defending our lands, and ensuring that our people have what they need to thrive. Your work has laid the foundation for everything we have today and for everything we will build tomorrow. However, we must not neglect the significant challenges facing that crucial work today. We gather here during a time when tribal sovereignty requires our constant vigilance. The federal government continues to fall short on its trust and treaty obligations. Our people continue to be subject to arbitrary and irresponsible barriers to crucial resources. We face cuts to education, threats to our land and water rights, underrepresentation in decisions that shape the future of our nation. These are not new struggles, but as they persist, they demand continuous attention and action. The federal government has a legal and moral obligation to provide educational resources to the youth. This sacred responsibility has been enshrined in our treaties and upheld in courts across tribal nations and the United States. And yet, tribal colleges and universities continue to experience reductions in staffing and resources that directly harm our Native students. These cuts have hindered essential resources for Native youth, including mentors, mental health services, and financial support. These are not just handouts, they are not just numbers on a budget sheet. They are legally mandated infrastructure to secure the well-being of our communities. Behind every position eliminated is a person who dedicated their career to lifting up our young people, and every resource cut is a student's path to success that becomes that much harder. Our students deserve better than broken promises. That is why the NCAI Youth Commission will not sit by and why we are taking action. The 2025 mid-year resolution titled Upholding Trust and Treaty Obligations for Higher Education Access was passed this year. This crucial legislation declares our opposition to harmful cuts to Pell Grant funding and eligibility and reaffirms our commitment to supporting higher education for Native students. The message of this resolution echoes in our continued fight. Education is not a privilege. It is a right safeguarded by the law. Native youth are stepping into leadership roles earlier than ever before. Across Indian country, young people are creating their own pathways to success to leadership. They are serving on community boards, organizing grassroots movements, and making their voices heard within their nations. They are ensuring that our words, our stories, and our ways of knowing will not be lost. Native youth are pursuing higher education, returning home to serve their communities, and using their skills to address their unique challenges that our nations face. They are not waiting for permission to lead, they are already leading. This year, the NCAI Youth Commission has identified 3 priority initiatives that reflect the needs and voices of Native youth. This includes financial literacy, land and water protection, community and relationship building. These priorities will guide the Youth Commission's work as we continue to advocate for the next generation. But our youth cannot do this work alone. We need the strength and wisdom of our communities to guide us through. There is no tribal sovereignty without Native youth. If we do not create pathways for our young people to lead, who will defend our land, our waters, and our way in life to years to come? Sovereignty is not just a political status. It is a living practice. It must be exercised, protected, and passed on from one generation to the next. So I ask each of you to advocate for full funding of our trust and treaty obligations to every level of the government. Continue and invest in youth programs within your nation. Include young people in your councils, committees, and decision-making processes, and continue to mentor the next generation leaders and trust them with real responsibility. The work that you have done has brought us this far. Now help us carry it forward. I also want to speak on something that has weighed heavily on many of our Native youth. Recent immigration enforcement actions on college campuses have created fear and uncertainty among students across the United States. Indigenous peoples have lived on these lands since time immemorial, and yet many Native students have faced questioning, harassment, and even detention simply because of how they look. No student should have to carry their tribal enrollment card and passport out of fear. No student should have to worry about being stopped on their way to class. Our Native youth go to college to learn, to grow, and to bring back knowledge back to their communities, not to be treated as suspects in their own homelands. We stand in solidarity with all students who are living in fear, and we call on institutions and policymakers to ensure that campuses remain safe spaces for learning and community, not sites of intimidation. I would like to close with gratitude to the elders who paved the way, to the leaders who continue the fight, and to the Native youth who inspire me every day. Our nations have survived centuries of challenges to our existence. We are still here, our languages are still spoken, our traditions are still practiced, our communities are still strong, and our young people are ready to lead. Yawanko, Swagwegu, Ogale, Swanadisio. Thank you.
Thank you, Co-President, for grounding us in the importance of education, mentorship, and the systems that shape the future of our nations. As we continue this conversation, I want to speak to how we lead, not just the policies we advance, but the values and responsibilities that guide us as we move forward together. In our cultures, leadership has never been about standing above others. It has always been standing with them. Many of our nations teach us that no one person is greater than another, and that leadership is rooted in humility, balance, and responsibility. Among the Haudenosaunee, the great law of peace reminds us that leadership must be guided by peace, equity, and a responsibility to future generations. Among the Anishinaabe, the 7 grandfather teachings guide us, and one of the most powerful is humility. Humility teaches us that our titles do not define who we are. Our actions do. The way we show up for our nations, our communities, and one another matters far more than any position we hold. The Creator made us all equal, and we should never forget that. None of us are perfect, and if we were, there would be no space left to learn, to grow, or to become better sisters, brothers, and relatives for our people. Our teachings remind us that leadership requires us to be both teachers and learners. That is where growth happens, and where open-minded leadership begins. There is so much each of us can learn from one another, and in order to acquire that understanding, we must be eager to listen. My grandmother used to tell me, "Leave a place better than you found it." That teaching grounds me today. It reminds me that leadership is not about personal legacy, but about collective responsibility. I encourage everyone in this room to reconnect with the teachings that guide you, because our values should always shape the way we lead. Those same teachings remind us of the importance of culture and language in everything we do. Culture is not something we visit when it's convenient. It is something we carry into every room, every policy discussion, and every decision we make. When we integrate language, ceremony, and cultural values into governance, we keep the Creator, our ancestors, and our responsibilities at the center of our work. So I ask us to pause for a moment. Take a look around this room. Notice how many youth you see here today. That number matters. If Native youth are the future of Indian country, then the future cannot be built without inclusion and consideration of youth in leadership spaces. Youth deserve to be in these rooms. Youth deserve to be present on the Hill, advocating for our nations, learning how decisions are made, and shaping the futures they will inherit. Too often, Native youth are invited merely into spaces symbolically, asked to sit at tables without being trusted with meaningful responsibility. We must move beyond tokenism. We must stop using youth and start working with them. We must stop silencing young voices and instead uplift them. Youth bring lived experience, creativity, and new perspectives to governance. We cannot expect young people to lead if we never allow them to learn. I encourage tribal leaders to bring youth into these spaces not as a gesture, but as an investment through mentorship, guidance, and opportunities to engage meaningfully in leadership. We must also acknowledge the moment we are living in. We are living in a time of uncertainty, politically, socially, and spiritually. Across Indian country and the land cared for by their ancestors for millennia, many of our people are moving through fear, wondering if they are safe, if they will be questioned, and if their identities will be respected. Let me be clear. Our people are citizens of sovereign tribal nation. That is not a political statement. It is a legal and historical truth. In moments like this, leadership is not about reaction or rhetoric. It is about care, clarity, and protection of our people, especially our youth. From a youth perspective, the impact of fear and uncertainty is already real. People across the United States are afraid to leave their homes. Cultural programs and community gatherings are being canceled. Safe spaces for learning, healing, and connection are disappearing because families are worried about their safety and well-being. No one should have to decide between their education, their culture, and their sense of safety. No family should have to live in fear simply for existing. This is not about politics. This is about the well-being of our people, of all people. This is about dignity. This is about protection, and this is about leadership that chooses care over silence. This moment is especially critical when we consider the challenges our communities are facing right now. Across the country, federal funding that supports mental health, substance use treatment, and community-based healing programs have been reduced or eliminated. When funding disappears, the impact is not abstract. It means fewer counselors, fewer culturally grounded programs, and fewer resources for young people who are already carrying more than they should. That reality underscores why youth leadership must be trusted and resourced, not symbolic. That is why I want to highlight an important resolution written by the NCAI Youth Commission and passed at the 2025 NCAI Annual Convention in Seattle, Healing the Next Generation, Native Youth Leading the Fight Against Substance Abuse. This resolution was grounded in vulnerable, crucial conversations about what we are seeing in our communities, our families, and sometimes within ourselves. We did not write it because it sounded good on paper. We wrote it because substance abuse is something our generation is carrying, and too often we are expected to survive it without being included in the solutions. This resolution calls for sustained investment in youth-led, culturally grounded prevention, treatment, and recovery initiatives that reflect who we are as Indigenous people. As we head to the Hill, we are carrying this resolution with us and advocating for trust in tribal and youth leadership and for policies that meet Native youth where they are. This work is not theoretical. Over the past year, the NCAI Youth Commission has moved beyond planning and into action. We are creating spaces where Native youth can learn how policy works, engage in civic life, and build a confidence to lead. Through workshops, educational resources, talking circles, and direct conversations with leaders at every level, youth are gaining tools to protect sovereignty and shape decisions that affect our daily lives. One of those tools is the reclamation of Indigenous languages, which bring life to these actions. They remind us that everything around us is living, and that our words, our decisions, and our policies carry spirit. Speaking our languages helps the Creator understand us. It helps our ancestors hear us, and it keeps our nations alive in ways no policy alone ever could. We can look to our relatives across the border for inspiration. When Anishinaabe Member of Parliament Sol Mamakwa spoke Ojibwe on the floor of Canadian Parliament, it was more than a historic moment. It was an assertion of sovereignty. In Canada, many treaties and policies are written and spoken in Indigenous languages. That practice integrates culture into governance and affirms Indigenous presence and authority in decision-making spaces. Here in the United States, we have many policies written about our cultures and languages, but none written in our traditional languages at the federal level. Language is legacy, it is value, it is connection. I believe that is something we should begin to explore. It is never too late to learn your language, reclaim your teachings, or reconnect with where you come from. Our ancestors fought too hard for us to turn away from who we are. That is why we are prioritizing in language and culture initiatives that support youth in reconnecting with our identities, learning from elders, and understanding the deep connection between culture, sovereignty, and policy. Going beyond familiar lands and borders, Native youth are learning from Indigenous leaders across the globe and bringing those lessons home to strengthen our nations through international engagement at the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. Much closer to home, there is one leader who has inspired much of our work. I want to take a moment to honor the late Chairman Ernie Stevens, Jr., a leader whose legacy continues to shape this movement and this organization. Chairman Stevens was fundamental in helping establish the NCAI Youth Commission. He believed deeply in Native youth leadership, not as a future concept, but as a present responsibility. He was always ready to support young people in Indian country, always willing to listen, and always willing to open doors so youth could walk through them. At the 2025 NCAI Annual Convention, the Youth Commission renamed our Youth Warrior Award in his honor. We did this not only to recognize his leadership, but to ensure that future generations of youth leaders will know his name, his impact, and his commitment to Indigenous youth. His loss has affected us deeply, but his legacy will live on through the NCAI Youth Commission and through every youth leader who steps forward, knowing that they belong in these spaces because Chairman Stephen believed in us. We carry his vision forward by continuing to invest in youth, protect their voices, and create pathways for them to lead. This work will continue and it will grow. We invite tribal leaders, organizations, and partners to bring us into your spaces, not only so we can share what we are learning, but so we can continue learning alongside you. Leadership is strongest when it is shared and rooted in trust. As I close, I want to leave us with this. Our ancestors survived so that we could stand here today. They carried teachings, languages, and responsibilities forward, even when the world told them we would disappear. Our youth are watching to see what kind of future we will build, and every leader in this room will help decide whether that future is shaped by fear or by courage. If we lead with humility, remain both teachers and learners, and make space for the next generation to lead alongside us, we will leave more than policies behind. We will leave strong nations, living cultures, and a future worthy of those who came before us and those yet to come. That is how we leave a place better than we found it. Jimmy Gwetch, thank you.
I'm glad I'm not speaking next.